What's up YouTube? GLP Standard here. Today I'm going to be changing the front and rear brake pads on my 2004 Suzuki GSXR-600, and I decided to make a little video and document the process. You might be asking yourself, why am I wasting my time making a video for something so simple? And there's really two reasons. Number one, I didn't see anything specific to this bike as to how to do it, and granted they're all very similar. I'm sure that each bike is just a little bit different, so I wanted to make a video and document this particular bike. Number two, if it helps at least one person, then it wasn't a waste of time as far as I see it. So plus I enjoy making these videos anyway, and I'm already changing my brakes, so why not just film it and post it? Maybe it'll help somebody out in the future. So that being said, let's get started. You can see here in my shop manual how simple it is. I mean, literally it only takes up one page. It goes from here down over to here. That's where it stops. So that's how simple it is. So if anybody has any questions, just let me know, but it's pretty straightforward, so shouldn't really have any confusion. It's pretty simple. There's one pin that holds the brake pads into the caliper, and then two 12mm bolts that hold the caliper to the bike. Don't touch these two. Those are what actually hold the caliper two pieces together, so don't make that mistake like I did. If you do, you'll probably lose all your brake fluid, and yeah, that wouldn't be good. So don't touch these two, just this one and these two. What you want to do is loosen the brake pad pin first before you take these out. That way it'll be a little bit easier to get these out, and these will kind of hold the caliper in one place. So these are 12mm like I said, and then this pin is a 5mm hex head. So go ahead and loosen this and then remove these two bolts. Get this loosened and these loosened, just go ahead and back these ones out. And then the caliper should pull off of the rotor. When you let this go, you want to make sure that this is tied up to the swing arm by something, probably a zip tie or bungee cord, something like that. You don't want to just let it go and let it hang by the brake line, because that could put stress on it and damage the brake line. So just go ahead and grab yourself a zip tie or a bungee cord and loop it through here and attach it to the swing arm if you need to let it go. Next step you want to do is remove this pin completely, and then your brake pads should just lift right out. I don't know if you can see it, but that's how they're held in. The pin just basically goes through the top of the brake pads, and that's what holds them between the two halves of the caliper. So go ahead and remove this completely, and then the brake pad should just pull out. After you get the pin out, you want to be careful, because there's nothing holding the pads in anymore. So if you don't pay attention to how this clip goes in, then you might not be able to get it back in right. It's pretty self-explanatory on this bike. It pretty much only goes in one way, but you just want to pay attention to how that goes in. And then you can just pull that off, and then brake pad should drop out like so. As you can see, it's pretty disgusting in there. So what you want to do before you do anything else is grab yourself some brake cleaner and clean up the caliper real good. After you get the caliper cleaned up, you want to press these two pistons in so that you can make room for the new brake pads. They're obviously going to be thicker than the ones that came out, so we need to press these two in, compress them back into the caliper housing. That way it'll make room for the new pads to go over the rotor. So you should be able to do it by hand. It might be a little difficult, but if you can't, use a couple C-clamps. Just put the old brake pads back in to spread out the pressure evenly, and then compress them if you can't do it by hand. And that's all there is to it. So once you go ahead and do that, you can start reassembling. So up to this point, you got your caliper off the bike, pulled the brake pads out, and cleaned the caliper with brake cleaner, and then compressed the two pistons in, and that's all there is to it up to this point. Get the brake pads in place, and then get the clip in. You can push the retaining pin back through, and then go ahead and tighten that by hand. After you get that tightened by hand, you can go ahead and mount the caliper back up to the bike. And go ahead and start threading the caliper mounting bolts back through. After you got all that hand tightened back up, you want to go ahead and torque these back down. This one, and that one. We'll go ahead and start with these, and then we'll do the pad mounting pin. Go ahead and pump the rear brake a couple times to seat the brake pad. And should be all there is to it. Now we're going to do the fronts. The fronts are very similar. Only difference is there's two calipers, two sets of brake pads, and two mounting pins instead of the one. But other than that, it's all pretty much the same. So what you want to do is we'll start on the right side first. Go ahead and loosen up the two mounting pins, and then remove the caliper mounting bolts. Once you got these two loosened and these two out, just go ahead and pull the caliper off. And same deal as before, you don't want to let it hang by the brake lines, so go ahead and bungee it up and then let it go. Once you get the caliper off, you can go ahead and finish removing these two bolts, and then same deal as the back brakes. Brake pads should just pull right out. And be careful when you remove these to take note of how these clips go in. So once those are out, you should just be able to pull the brake pads out. Go ahead and set those aside. And these clips should come out as well. May have to compress the pistons in to get them out. So after you remove the clip and the brake pad, that's what you have left. Same as the back one. Now we need to clean these up, and I had to compress the pistons in to get the clip out. It was kind of a pain in the ass, but if you don't have to, you'll obviously have to compress the pistons again anyway later. So now would be a good time to do it. Or You could do it after you clean it up, but now we're gonna clean up the brake caliper with brake cleaner, just like the last one. After you get your caliper cleaned up, next step is to put the clip and the new brake pads back in. You get those back in, get the pins back in, everything's looking good. You can go ahead and put the caliper back on the rotor. Once you got that all mounted up and hand tight, you can go ahead and torque these down and you're all done. Then you gotta go and do the other side. So that's about it. It's not really much more to it. After you get both sides done, go ahead and pump the front brake a couple times to set the new pads, just like you did on the back one. A couple things to remember: don't touch the brake lever until you have everything mounted back up. Once you take the caliper off, you don't want to go ahead and press the brakes until everything's mounted back up. But other than that, the only other thing to remember is to not touch the surface of the new brake pads. And also, when you do the front ones, again, you don't want to touch the front brake lever until you have both sides done, because they're both connected. So you want to make sure you have both sides done before you set the brake pads. But other than that, that's it. If you have any questions, just let me know.